I should like to welcome you to this Suicide Risk Assessment and Management Workshop. This workshop is the collaboration between the Community Counseling and Assessment Center, which normally would put on 8 public lectures per year. And having done the first one in September, when we had a spate of suicides, and I was getting calls from people who were in schools and from the police force who were concerned about, what do I do when these people are calling me? And it's a distressing situation. And so I decided that we change what we had planned to do in October, and that was violence and crime, and talk about suicide, which is violence against the self. I'm going to ask you to follow along in your booklet, because a lot of what I'm going to talk to you about, I'm going to refer to the booklet as well. So each person should have a booklet, and I'm going to ask you to follow along, because I'm going to refer to the booklet. What you see on the screen will not cover everything that needs to be covered. Suicide is violence against the self. It's not well understood, but it impacts everybody. It impacts the community, it impacts the neighborhood, it impacts the family, the nearest and dearest. And of course, there is, according to the region you live in, some beliefs about suicide, which we will discuss as time goes on. But my agenda for today includes a brief introduction, definition of suicide, some mention of the history of suicide. I'm not going to stay long on that. We want to get to the meat of the matter. I can't speak any louder than this. We want to talk about understanding suicide risk, suicide and youth. We're going to do a suicide risk assessment, and for that you'll have a guide that's in your booklet. And then there's a tool for assessment of risk. Talk about common problems in evaluating suicide risk, suicide prevention, suicide intervention, and then we're going to have some case vignettes at the end, very interesting vignettes, where we actually do what a workshop is supposed to do and allow you to get to put into practice the things that you understand so that learning can take place. Worldwide, suicide is an important public health problem. It's not just a problem for the community, it's a public health problem. And there's still a reluctance to talk about the subject of suicide openly and in a manner that is helpful. When people talk about suicide, when people do things in the media, it is sensationalism, it is alarm, and it doesn't help the situation with suicide at all. There are guidelines for sensible and sensitive reporting for the media, which I referred Cable 12 when they came for an interview this morning, because I've indicated to the media that I would allow no taping of this by the media. They could interview me before or they could interview me afterwards, but I didn't want them to get any shots. I didn't want them to get any taping. So that was the condition I set. When we had these spate of suicides, I got calls from just about every media house wanting a statement or wanting to have a short interview. And with each one I said, if you give me in writing full control of the content and how it's delivered, I will certainly make a statement. But if you're not prepared to do that, then I'm making no statement. And nobody gave me that in writing because they want to jazz up whatever it is. They're not interested in helping the problem with suicide. They're interested in their viewership or listenership. Okay? I can't collaborate with them in that. So the media does not understand the role they play currently, or that they can play, which is very helpful. They can be very helpful. And they're clear-cut guidelines. If you go on the WHO website and look up guidelines for the media, it's stated right there, clearly. Not only is it stated clearly what the guidelines are for sensitive and sensible reporting and how it can help, but it's also stated what the problems are with the sensationalism. Copycat suicides, have you ever heard of that? Okay. I could have put 1M, but it's not as impressive as putting 1 and 6 zeros. 1 million suicides per year worldwide. 1 million. You got to let that sink in. And it's estimated to rise to 1.5 million by 2020. 1 million. Cost is enormous. 1.4% of the global burden of disease or disease burden. Enormous. Our concern, especially for young people, is that there's an alarming increase in the rates for young people. And Dr. Curtis Downs will talk about that when she gets to those slides. We don't have reliable local data, so I'm not going to quote local data. All right? In fact, Dr. Clark said to me when we were talking yesterday, he said, let's get together and write a paper so that we can get the data together and at least have some reference point for where we are with numbers, with creative collecting of information. Because a lot of things that happen don't even reach to the point where data is recorded. Definition of suicide: deliberate act of self-harm taken with the expectation that it will be fatal. In other words, there is an intention to die. A suicide attempt, or what we refer to as suicidal behavior, is a non-fatal act of self-harm, often with the aim of mobilizing help. Now, you have to be careful, because one of the things I'm going to encourage you to do is to examine your reaction to these behaviors.